Hello and welcome to episode 114 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. From the present, I am your tame Foundry author, Drogon1701. Joining us from the past is 18th century light cavalry officer, Greendragoon.
Wow, not too many people get the actual reference.
Hey, I watched The Patriot. I know what's going on. I have a good grasp of history. And joining us from the future is 29th century temporal agent, Markhawkman.
What? You saw through my clever disguise?
I'm not sure clever is the right word. And from a random parallel timeline is our guest tonight, Castmodean.
Doomed from not the JJ verse.
Other verses. Same as the first. Well, what we're going to do tonight, gentlemen, is we're going to talk a lot about time travel. I've been wanting to do a few themed episodes, and this seemed like a good excuse because we have a major time travel related featured episode that just came out. Obviously that would be Midnight, and we will get to that in just a little bit. But first, we're going to show off this new map. That's right, we got a new map in the Foundry. Zeronius Rex was kind enough to give us a Solanae themed map, which actually is a version of the what is it called? The Joint Allied Sphere Command?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Sounds right.
I want to say it shares a basic layout with the Fleet Spire interiors too.
Yeah, I believe you're right. But what she did is she took out all of, or almost all, we found a couple of stragglers, but most of the retrofitted stuff that the Alliance put in, and cleaned all that out so that we could have a nice clean Solanae themed map. So obviously we start in this room here, which I never noticed before, but has like a star map on the ceiling.
Which moves strangely if you
a little low res,
move around. Move around as you're looking
oh
at
man, how cool is that? I never go into this room much on the Joint Command map.
To say, on the Joint Command map, this is a bar.
That's why I don't go in there.
For some reason on my computer, I see the ceiling is flat gray.
I'm guessing
it may be a graphics setting thing. So let's see. Out here we have the kind of the main room, which of course you all know is the big command center. You know, you down here where you had your bank and mail and exchange operations. I think in the original map there's like a hologram up here of something. I think of the sphere itself.
Well, also one thing to remember is that in the original, the bowl in the middle is blocked off by an invisible.
This is true. And for that reason, these railings are clippable. You can go right through them. Because that's not an issue on the original map.
Yeah, in the original map, it's the invisible that keeps you from walking through the railing.
Exactly.
Because the invisible is outside the railing.
Now it's a mosh pit.
Now, there are still a few invisible walls, like over here. Because you don't want to drop down into the bottomless pit. But what's nice is we go up this ramp here, and we got the Omega molecule thing floating around. Which
By the way, is that a placeable asset now?
I don't think anything in here is placeable assets yet.
Not yet. It'll be on the 3.0 version of the request list.
No, I'm pretty sure I included Solanae assets on our poll. So one thing that we do not have also that Pax was just asking about is round doors for the corridor.
Oh, well, one thing I tried mentioning a second ago, but actually muted myself at the wrong time. You can jump through the giant hologram of the Omega Ball.
I think Zero said that she was going to try and get the doors for us as placeable assets.
That would be excellent.
But as always, she didn't know when it would get done and when it would get in. So,
speaking of which, she has actually added another map. She added the Ancient Iconia map from Midnight,
which we may or may not see tomorrow.
Yeah, because it is on Redshirt. Of course, we can't actually go test it on Redshirt because Foundry was disabled. But if it went to Redshirt, there's a fair to middling chance it will come tomorrow. We often, because of the time we do this show, we get the patch notes for Thursday posted right in the middle of the show. So we'll keep an eye on that and see if it's coming tomorrow or not.
Okay, so this room that I'm currently standing in, this is the one where you have the door that you go up to read all of the messages that Nell and Exel sends you.
That is correct.
So this is the one where in the fleet-based version, there's another room behind this door that you can actually go into and look around, right?
I'm not sure. It's been a little while since I've run around in there. But that is where the science lab is on the Joint Command. Of course, up here is where Commander Cole has his desk.
Yes, we finally ousted Cole.
Now, I should point out that one thing that is missing, and maybe we can get Zero to add this, is a backdrop. Or at least I haven't found one yet. If anyone else has found one, chime in.
Well, I do have one interesting question. What happens if you try to place yourself above the ceiling of this room? Because like the original version, I keep seeing on the mini-map this room that I can't walk to.
I'm not sure which room you're talking about. I don't see anything up.
Well, it's something for you to play with later, Mark.
It's the room with no doors.
Now, one thing that, I said there's no backdrop, but there is some geometry out the window. You see the floor of the Dyson sphere. So I wonder if you could build down.
On second thought, I was just confused. I was thinking something was something other than what it actually was. Never mind.
So here is a thought. Even if you didn't want to use this particular room, you could build just outside of it and make your own skyscraper.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. That opens up some possibilities depending on how big the the buildable area is outside the geometry here.
Well, I mean, I'll be surprised if it's to scale, but I imagine it has to be pretty large in order to get the perspective.
Possibly.
Well, the map itself looks like it has a fairly large void. Now, how much of it's actually buildable? Well,
definitely something to play with. I know I've been, since you added this, I've been considering putting it in my second Iconian War mission, which was going to have a crashed Elachi ship, which I was going to have to build myself because we don't have any of those, and I was going to have to try and make it somehow Elachi looking. But now that we got this, I'll just make it a crashed Solanae ship. Put all kinds of debris and stuff around.
Can we look at the other room?
Well, the other room isn't much to look at, but
I think it's important
the
because
blank room is always good.
Yeah.
It's a blank
one thing
template,
that I keep thinking about this one is that in the original version, isn't this like where they had like the transporter pad or something like that?
No, there is no transport
It's like
pad in this version.
The Taylor is down here, isn't it?
Oh wait,
Yeah.
now I remember what. Now I
The
remember
transporter pad
which one this is.
is in the other sphere.
I had this confused with the other Dyson sphere. This
Yeah.
is the room that they have like the medical bay and stuff like that. Here's like just entire like starships worth of packed crates sitting on the floor.
Exactly.
In a maze you have to walk around to talk to the amputees.
I say a blank room is like an empty canvas. It has near infinite potential.
All right, so that was the new map that we got, and we're always excited when we get a new map because it is fairly rare. Obviously, the last one we got was new ESD, and of course, the reason they're rare is because they take more effort and time out of somebody's day to add. So we're grateful that Zero has done this for us. So
Okay.
why don't we start by talking about the mission? Let's talk about
Midnight.
Midnight.
It's the end of the world as we know it.
Or not actually. Dragoon, before I forget, why don't you do your favorite thing in the world and put up the spoiler warning?
All right. Spoiler alert, everyone. Cool sound effect pending.
All right, so basically it starts off, as most of these do, over at the research station. There's more fun things going on. Debates about, whether the weapon is ready, because you're actually going to, and this is funny because we were speculating last time, and we actually got pretty close on a few things. They've modified the weapon to send you back in time. For better or for worse.
They actually made a proper time ship out of the weapon instead of a time weapon.
Which I thought was pretty cool. Because I had thought of it.
Well,
also, it's the sort of thing that I was just going to say, it's the sort of thing I could visualize 7 of 9 coming up with, because it was 7 of 9 in Voyager who figured out the whole temporal shielding thing in the first place.
She seems to have a grasp of it. I get the feeling Nog is more like an administrator. He's not necessarily doing the work, but he's shepherding it along.
Well, he's a pretty smart guy. He's the kind of guy who takes research notes from people who spend years working on things and then figures out how to make them into practical applications. Because remember, he's the guy from DS9 who repaired a transporter with a spatula.
I think that's Rom. You're thinking of Rom.
Oh.
Yeah, but that's where Nog gets it, right? That's where he gets the talent. Luckily, he has better social skills. So, we learn that there's going to be a big attack on Earth. And obviously, that's going to be bad. So we have to... the temporal weapon isn't quite ready, so we have to go basically delay the Iconians in orbit of Earth until it is ready, and then maybe we can go back in time and try and... the original plan, anyway, is to basically ensure that none of them survive the cataclysm that destroyed the Iconian homeworld. The attack,
Basically,
really.
And the Iconians by any means necessary.
Yeah. Which, is something that I was going through thinking of it. That's not good. And Starfleet, we don't want to do that.
It's also a pretty much a standard, what's the word for it? Predestination paradox thing where you kill your enemy before you met your enemy.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like a grandfather paradox?
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Kind of.
In a way. So you fight off the heralds for a little bit. ESD seems to get really pounded again, and
not as
finally,
bad as last time.
Not quite as bad as last time.
Yeah. This time it's only a few chunks blasted out of the hull. The previous time, the thing literally got smashed to pieces.
Pax brings up a good thing. He says, during the battle around ESD, someone says the heralds are bringing in some sort of massive infrastructure in from Jupiter, and we never get to find out what it is. Apparently, this was an early idea that was eventually cut from the episode, but a little bit of dialogue remained. There was something about they were going to like collapse Jupiter into a star or something crazy like that.
All these worlds are yours except Europa.
One thing that someone mentioned on the forum is that depending on your video settings, you may or may not see something other than a sky field around the battle.
Well, I know I see a bunch of herald ships in the background.
Oh yeah.
So someone on the forum told me they thought that maybe that the Iconians had surrounded Earth with some sort of metal dome or something.
Well, we know they're capable of building such things.
But it's not something I actually noticed when I was playing it, but I had my video settings turned down.
No, and I didn't notice that particularly either. But I did see a heck of a lot of ships.
I'm going to replay it tomorrow in the morning and maybe make a few pictures if I see anything interesting I didn't take pictures of last time.
Sure. But in any case, the Jupiter thing was cut, so it there is no turning of Jupiter into a sun in the episode.
That's probably just as well. I think
that's probably a good cut there. I'm not quite sure what the point of it was.
Yeah.
But maybe obviously there was probably more to it.
A local weapon.
Yeah, it would have been devastating. I mean, especially the gravitational changes would have pulled every other planet apart, probably.
Nah, Jupiter would have the same mass even if it was a sun. Also, it'd be too dim probably to actually change much on Earth.
But it's still a huge plasma furnace.
Yeah, but it's
I was saying the only way to turn it into a star is to increase its mass.
Well, one book I read that they had this idea that if you were to use, fuse it with Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn, you might be able to make a red dwarf star out of it. But that actually does create a problem because that really would horribly screw up the gravitational balance of the solar system.
Still,
yes, we are talking about a civilization that has the ability to build a Dyson sphere, which means that it can build a structure that starts at 93 million miles and goes all around a star at that distance.
Well, I almost thought because they, one of the things that people have been talking about as far as the Dyson sphere goes is they, saying, oh, that would have to be a really tiny star. Otherwise, everything would be cooked, or, the thing would be the sphere itself would be so big that it would be ridiculous. And so you wonder if they can turn a small gas giant into a star, maybe that's the beginning that's how they get a star inside the thing. That's what they start with, is a very small star.
Well, also the Herald sphere is ridiculously large. So, some of the spheres they've made may not be all that large, but the Herald sphere was pretty ridiculous. And actually, you know what? The sphere that they found in that TNG episode was also pretty dang big.
Yeah, it was pretty big. course, this all could be fertile ground to mine for Foundry authors. Yeah. Just for fun.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you should turn Jupiter into a star. I'm just saying you can turn Jupiter into a star.
Well, I mean, just getting back to the whole Dyson sphere thing, we happen to now have a Dyson sphere map.
We do. We're sitting in it.
And you can even put Crow T Robot there and say, "Hi, Mike, I'm Starchild."
So one of the things I liked about this scene was that it strongly demonstrates what's at stake early in the mission. So before we get to the whole going back in time thing, we kind of see the futility of all these Iconian ships. We know we can't beat them. And at the same time...
Doesn't matter how many we destroy, they keep coming.
And at the same time, we've got Earth, which is one of the most precious things that we can lose. So it ideally sets it up that this is the climax. This is the turning point of no return. If we fail, we lose Earth, and I don't even want to pretend to imagine a Star Trek universe without it.
Basically, you get that alternate timeline that we briefly glimpsed in, I believe the episode is Parallels, the one where Worf is jumping between timelines.
Yeah, with the...
And on screen, one comes with Riker and saying how desperate everything is because the Borg took over and assimilated Earth.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, it does a good job of setting up the situation as dire.
It does. But fortunately, they fix get it working, the time ship, and send us back in time. But not before, I should say, we get a little visit from an old friend.
Sela.
Sela shows up. She's been in the Gamma Quadrant. She's been in the Gamma Quadrant recruiting the Dominion.
Guess the theories about that were right.
And she brings an entire fleet of Dominion ships with her. Granted, by Dominion standards, it is a small fleet, but it's still a fleet.
Quite small. But just in the nick of time, although maybe it wouldn't have been better if she had not come along. As we find out later.
In fairness, though, I mean, it seems like even with the Dominion fleet, wouldn't be enough.
No.
There's still the time jump is the only option.
It is. And so Cogran and his ship goes in first, and then we and Sela go in together. And we end up at Iconia. Way back in the day, 200,000 years ago.
And it's very pretty.
It is. It's a beautiful map, and I am thrilled that we're going to have it in the Foundry. One thing I noticed about it is that it seems like it's either, it reminded me of the Dyson Sphere motif, and it seemed like we were very high in the air.
It was a happy Dyson Sphere motif.
We were on a floating platform of some kind.
Yeah, a floating platform of some kind.
You could see structures down below.
Which I thought was very cool. And yeah, it absolutely was very happy.
It was not this blue color that is behind us.
Mm-hmm. It was very light gray, or sort of a peach color.
Warm colors.
Warm colors. And then it's funny because, I mean, even when you go inside the structure part of it, which looks a lot like the Herald interiors that we've seen earlier in our prime, in our time, our present, it's different colors there too, and warmer and happier colors. Pastels.
It was not the angry reds and yellows and oranges.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I appreciated that change.
And, well, never mind. I'll mention that at the appropriate time. Spoilers, there's a reason for it.
Yeah. Well, and as you say, there's a reason for why everything looks happier. It's because, well, it's kind of a happier time for the Iconians. They're a peaceful people, which is funny because that is exactly what Captain Picard, way back in Contagion, theorized.
Yeah, and I mean, that was a really cool thing to kind of tie it back to that, because I mean, up till this now, the game has been pushing the Iconians as these warmongers,
Yeah.
and
which I've heard
kind
that complaint on the forums of, somebody tried out the Picard quotes. As Picard says, they were peaceful. Why are they conquerors now?
Well, Picard guessed that they were peaceful
because
in his estimation, the people who labeled the Iconians as demons of air and darkness were warmongers themselves and didn't attack the Iconians because the Iconians attacked them. They attacked the Iconians as a preemptive strike.
Exactly.
Which does seem to have been true. One thing I would like to point out in the as a counterpoint to this, though, is that the Iconians really are kind of like jerks when dealing with lesser races, even in the past.
Yeah, they still have that arrogance about them. We're the most advanced species. We're not. They have almost sort of a version of the Prime Directive, but it's almost more like a negative version, whereas the Federation's is more of a positive version.
I don't know. I mean, that doesn't really seem fair because I mean it's almost verbatim what our Prime Directive is, and the reasons they give for not sharing their technologies are very valid ones.
Well, valid to a certain extent, but when you look at it as a matter of degree, that's where it falls down. It's because the one race that was trying to negotiate with the Iconians for the ability to better make vaccines to protect themselves from plagues.
Well, they wanted access to genetic engineering.
Well, that's what they asked for, yes. But
it wasn't what they were given.
What the Iconians had actually been giving them, though, was the Iconians weren't giving them the data to make vaccines. They were just giving them vaccines.
Well, I mean, a vaccine is only good against one plague.
Yeah, they were wanting to modify their entire genome, not just deal with.
They wanted to give them the fish. They didn't want to teach them to fish.
But I mean, if you read the logs, it even says in there that there's like a high probability that giving them genetic technology will not stop at curing disease.
They would actually take the disease and make it into something weaponized.
That was the other race. That was the Nacians, I think. The short, stumpy guy was the one that I was talking about. It was a different race, I think. Not entirely. It's hard to be completely certain. I made screenshots of the stuff, but I don't think all of them came out right.
But anyway, I mean, even Kerrigan is arguing that they're not all that different from the Federation, at least in some of their attitudes towards alien races.
And that was one of the most interesting turnabouts of the entire episode. The voice of reason and sanity was the Klingon.
Yes.
Which was scary. It almost makes me think the Klingon, the Iconians reformatted his tiny brain while he was there.
Well, I really liked it because it's like, okay, this guy, he is not really a very good battle commander, as we saw. But he may be an excellent diplomat.
He's also not particularly adept at writing letters of condolences.
Yeah.
Which is a reference to the latest Tales of War.
Yes, it is. But I mean, we had this guy who, was trying to be your typical aggressive Klingon, and frankly got a bunch of people killed because of it. But then he goes down here and he's like, and it's almost like he finds his niche of what he's supposed to do, and he's supposed to convince you to figure out some kind of other solution than just killing the ancient Iconians.
I mean,
and it's kind of funny because you saying that puts an entirely different light on the fact that they used Charge of the Light Brigade before we went back in time.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what happened, was that they wasted the entire Light Brigade in a fool's errand.
Yes. Attacked battalions of artillery with cavalry
on the high ground.
On the high ground, which was a bad idea, and they all died. Or practically all died.
And as a total side note, I kind of wish they had Nog actually say that he still didn't like that poem.
That would have been a great callback. Or just have Nog himself recite it.
That would have actually probably been the more...
Yeah. Because Nog's heard it before. So here's my question: is who is actually reciting that?
Oh,
I think
Sean?
It was multiple people. Because I think they kind of did it sort of like they did it in was it Sacrifice of Angels?
Yeah. With Bashir and O'Brien.
Because I know Sean definitely says it, but I kind of think that Paris also picked up on it, but I'm not 100% positive. I was more reading than I was able to hear at that moment.
Are we sure Kurland wasn't one of them? Because we know Kurland's ship was at the battle site.
I don't think they're allowed to use any sort of soundbite other than the Kurland here.
I don't think they're able to record anymore because of now that they're part of the Screen Actors Guild.
Oh, yeah, right. That.
And Bordicus likely is not.
It costs the money, so...
Yeah. It costs a lot of money to join, I think.
I think they're allowed a certain number of exemptions, like per year, for non-screen actors, but they have to be like very cautious about who they use that with.
But they can reuse stuff they've already recorded, hence Kurland here.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty funny. Had a good chuckle when that came over the line. I was curious if he had survived, because I didn't see him later. If the Defiant survived the battle.
I think it's obvious that it did.
I don't actually remember seeing it, but that also means I don't remember seeing it destroyed. So,
yeah, I didn't see it destroyed, but
well, I mean, how many times has Quinn's office gotten blown all to heck and he still survives? So,
by players, no less.
Yeah, where was Quinn in all this?
Evacuated from ESD when they lost all power.
That or hiding in his safe room. I don't know. Maybe
he's got some incredibly strong safe room in the middle of ESD that he just goes into every Thursday, just in case.
What? Didn't you notice that his chair is bolted to a hatch in the floor?
Now I want one of the characters to make a "it must be Thursday" joke.
I'm expecting more of a Thunderbirds Are Go sort of thing. Or it could go Voltron too. Chair descending into the bowels of it. And
oh, I'm sure they've done that on all kinds of different shows over the years. So anyway, we're back in the past, and you actually start out by sort of helping Iconians around, or I did anyway, with the Starfleet options. You help injured one, and you go and you talk to a lot of the other races that are there, and you kind of get a good impression of these people, just like Cogran has. And he's when you find him, because he went through first, so he apparently was there for what, like a week, 2 weeks?
I think he said 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
So he's been there for 2 weeks longer than you have, and he's been around. He concealed his ship, and he's been hanging around.
Which kind
he's
of
very
is
taken with the
what leads
Iconians.
to his change of heart, is because he's spent 2 weeks here already.
Yeah.
He probably learned something while he was there too.
That the Iconians aren't all that threatening.
Actually, I've played the mission as a KDF character as well as a Federation character, and the actual objectives were the same. You know, you talk to the same people, you do the same things, but the dialogue options were, well, you say the same thing, but it's like slightly rephrased, I think.
Well, I mean, they can only deviate so much without messing up the story.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're still going from point A to point B.
Something that we're very familiar with, being Foundry authors. But anyway, you get a sense that things are not going to go well for the Iconians very soon, because there's a lot of discontent among those other races. Some of which were the same ones that Picard referenced when he was talking about, trying to figure out the Iconian language.
Namely, the
Him and
Icobar
Data.
and the Denasians.
Yes,
And you actually get to meet some of them.
this is true. Mark, I
one
want
thing-
to charge you. I want to give you an assignment, because I know you're good at this. You should make costumes for these races that then Foundry authors can use.
Well,
So
I
now they
did
just use
make
the alien gen.
several observations when I was looking at them. The Denasians used the coral face pieces a lot, and a very, very weathered skin texture. I'm actually not 100% sure how to duplicate the Denasian skin texture in the editor. The Icobar, on the other hand, are easier to recreate. They're basically remans with forehead spikes and ruffled hair.
We also got those face
Also,
masks, which we don't have.
I think that's actually, yeah, that's right. The only face masks we have aren't flat.
Do we have some kind of a face mask?
We have the
heroic-
rebreathers.
and
Are
the
those
heroic
available
And
as
the
a
Hirogen.
costume option?
Yes.
I guess we do have the Hirogen. Although I thought the Hirogen was like a full helmet.
It does have a helmet too.
But it's available as a independent.
Yeah, I think so. They're different options because helmets have the special head category associated with them. The rebreather is a head attached thing. Oh, and one thing I noticed was that the short, stumpy alien that was complaining about needing better medical technology was actually wearing a rebreather when he was on Iconia.
Hmm.
By the way, I made pictures of all three of them, along with pictures of some of the random grunts you shoot later.
I think the
What
point
we
though,
get
is
is
that
a. Go ahead.
I think the point is though that these are alien gen aliens and not some
They are.
special custom made aliens.
Yeah.
One interesting thing that I noticed from both times going through this is that none of the guys that you end up shooting later in the mission are Denasians. They appear to all be either Icobar or that third unnamed race.
Well, what we've got is a coalition of various races that are unhappy with the Iconians, and as you see, as the map progresses, they start attacking. And so you are in a position where you have to help the Iconians. Which is funny because, of course, you came there to make sure they all die.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting because at one point in the mission, you actually have Tiket following you around and helping you shoot things.
Yes. But it all felt right to me. It felt like I wanted to help them.
Yeah. Well,
what about you guys?
that reminds me of one other thing I noticed is that the enemy mobs that were reskinned for this are not a race we have available as enemies in the Foundry. They took two of the enemy races that were used in the exploration cluster missions and used them. Because they have an odd assortment of powers that you don't have for the actual faction races.
Well, dev magic, right?
Of course. Because one thing I noticed was that I forget which of the two races it was, but one of the two races loved to use EG field on you. The other one actually had the ability to repeatedly use what were ground disable powers that would cause your captain to just kind of like become unable to do anything for a few seconds.
But what you bring up a kind of an interesting point, because you said these are old reskins of old exploration enemies, ones that you used to come across when you went down to a planet or space in the exploration zones.
They do seem to be, yes.
Well, I mean, I certainly think that such a group of NPCs would be useful in the Foundry as generic aliens, because I mean, normally we have to reskin.
Did you look at the faction icon they used? It was that gray chevron icon that the aliens from the exploration clusters use. Also, you see it on Nimbus for the Nimbus Pirates, because the Nimbus Pirates aren't affiliated with the Orion Syndicate, so they don't use the Orion logo. So instead they use that neutral gray logo.
I'm just pointing out that currently we've got to kind of be careful with reskinning mobs, because we get some outliers like Cardassians that put down holographic fields and produce more Cardassians. And stuff like that, or ships that spawn fighters specific to their faction. So things that we kind of run into as problems when we try to reskin new alien races. So getting a hold of those generic alien groups could be a very useful thing in the Foundry.
Could be.
Well, for the generic ship mobs, though, that would be particularly interesting, because we actually do have the ability to reskin things as the generic ships, but they don't fight like the generic ships.
Because they just fight like whatever base mob you used.
The generic ships were actually the first enemy I ran into in the game that used RSP. One thing that frustrated me when I first started doing the exploration clusters was enemies where they would activate some sort of ability, and all of a sudden they would stop taking damage to their shield completely.
Only fun would we get to do that. So anyway, the Iconians come under attack, and we decide to help them.
Because we're nice guys.
Because we're nice people.
And we what is the Iconian's name that we help?
The Mirren.
Mirren.
The one we go and help her extract the, what do you call it?
The World Heart.
World Heart.
World Heart.
Which sounds like a D&D item.
A compilation. It's basically their entire database.
It's kind of like that crystal that Jor-El gives to Kal-El in the Superman movies. It has like a recording of all of the Kryptonian stuff on it. Yeah, it's like that.
Only bigger and rounder.
And like with enough information to actually recreate Iconia.
Like a good Palantir.
Yeah, the one that Jor-El gave to Kal-El was more like a set of digital encyclopedias, really.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least the original one. The The newer butt-kicking Jarrell gave him something completely different.
I have to say, one of the things I was really impressed with was the way in which they redesigned the Iconians, because a number of these are Iconians that we've encountered before, and they look both completely different and eerily familiar at the same time.
Yeah, because they're, they look like a humanoid race, except with, 6 eyes and pointy heads.
Yeah, they're biological versus the present day versions, which are said to be energy based.
So you wonder what happened to them in the meantime, between 200,000 years ago and the present.
Sela speculates that they used their genetic engineering technology to remake themselves and make themselves physically more powerful, so that they could, take the full might of their knowledge and power and actually use it personally in battle. So you see, because at this point in time, when you see Tiket fighting, she carries around a staff weapon similar to what the heralds later use. And it even makes the same weird noise when she shoots at things.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't just, zap them with a wave of her hand.
Yeah, they're using weapons and technology. Whereas the Iconians from our time, not so much. They don't need it anymore.
I mean, it's definitely one of the most striking things about this portion of the mission is just that it's almost akin to Everything Old is New in the Davidian arc, where you first go through the lower levels of or not the Davidian, the Drazana station, and everything is just completely run down. It's dark, it's horror-esque, and then you go into the same place but back in the past, and everything is shiny and new and TOS bright colors, and it's all laid out the same way. You can recognize the layout, but it's still it's a completely different. So it's almost this. I always kind of equate this the new Iconians versus the old ones as kind of that difference, because the old Iconians are brighter and shinier and happier. And
there are certain things of the architecture that are highly reminiscent of the Solanae sphere, though, especially the ground battle zone with the Voth, because you have the various floating platforms with trees and stuff growing on them that are connected to each other by gently sloped catwalks. Except that in this case, the catwalks are energy fields, and they're not actual physical catwalks. But
I would speculate that the Solanae were probably influenced by the Iconians as far as architecture and stuff goes.
Pretty heavily, I'd think.
Well, I would say that the Iconians taught the Solanae how to build things like that. The Solanae, of course, used their own sort of aesthetic sense to dictate the fine details of the designs they used, but it was the Iconians who gave them the knowledge of how to build things like that.
But yeah, there's definitely been a kind of a design progression that's gone on in Stowe over the last couple of years, with dealing with the servitors, then getting up to the Iconians, and now going back and kind of seeing an origin of it all.
But in any case, the attack goes on. You save the world sphere, whatever it is, and you make for the gate to escape. And then Sela does what Sela does best.
I mean, I personally love this
scene.
She
shoots someone in the back. Literally, she shoots someone in the back.
Yes.
And the side, and the foot, and
anywhere she can.
But because, I mean, I like this because at the one time, I wasn't really expecting Sela to suddenly start shooting, but at the same time, once you kind of look back at it, you kind of see yeah, she was kind of building to that. You just didn't
Yeah, because
didn't expect her to pull the trigger.
She's been yelling at you the whole way when you're helping the Iconian. She's saying, "What are you doing? We're not here to do this."
And then when she sees them going through the portal, she's like, "Okay, well, this is my last chance to shoot the Iconians, so it's time to shoot the Iconians."
Well, I mean, I just feel like I gotta give major props to shoot, I'm spacing on her name.
Denise Crosby.
Denise Crosby. I gotta give major props to her because I mean, just that her acting for this when she realizes that this is her last chance to try and stop what she thinks will cause the destruction of her homeworld and opens fire. I mean, I was personally just kind of riveted at that point. It's a very powerful scene.
It is,
in a way, and one that you don't get very often in Stowe.
But ironically, by opening fire, she also gave you the tool to end the war.
True, but she also started the war in the process.
She also started the war. It's a circuitous thing. You know, she murders a couple of Iconians, and you know they're not going to be happy about that, and that precipitates the things that happened to the Romulans 200,000 years later.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like Janeway said, temporal paradoxes give me a headache.
Yeah. But at the same time, she also causes one of them to drop the sphere before they go. So you can get that sphere and take it back with you.
It's a funny thing because I almost saw this as kind of a metaphor for the cycle of violence, because we've literally got a situation where Sela strikes down the Iconians, which caused them to attack Romulus in the future, which causes Sela to strike at the Iconians, and you've got a cyclical loop where no one is the original aggressor. It's all caused by a previous aggression, and you've got a very literal cycle of violence going on. And it almost kind of it's this metaphor, kind of the whole futility of it.
Of course, then there's the old idea of that temporal paradoxes like this are the result of the time stream stabilizing after something different had happened.
I don't know about that, but I mean,
of course, you know, what could possibly have led to this? Yeah, I don't know.
So the JJ verse was always meant to happen.
Yes.
And Sela brought it about.
But I guess my point was I kind of felt like that was a very Star Trek thing, because Star Trek always loves to try and illustrate things through metaphor. So I have to say, I mean, for me personally, I think this is like one of the most Star Trek episodes that we have seen in this game.
I've been hearing a lot of people say that.
Well, there was an interesting metaphor in one of the early Voyager episodes, because Janeway scans this planet and realizes that it has some sort of dangerous technology that they're using as their planet's energy supply, and then accidentally goes back in time and starts trying to prevent them from using that dangerous energy technology, and realizes that her actions are what led the planet to get blown up.
But in the midst of all this cycle of violence, she also gives you the means to end it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you grab the World Sphere, head back to the present, and call up the Iconians and say, "Hey, looking for this?"
So getting back to one of our things we talked about last week, it turns out that you are the other.
Yes. and they didn't recognize you. Of course, you don't exactly come face to face with a ton of Iconians. It's like once or twice.
Actually, there's only one time I can think of in any of the story missions we actually come face to face with an Iconian, and that's when you get into that fight to the death with Imtara. That's the only time.
And you kill her, so.
Any other time, we're usually coming up against Taket, and, well, she's got a mad on to kill everything.
Yeah. And the other times is you see them interacting with other people in cutscenes and things like that, so they don't see you.
Yeah,
like when Imtara shows up on Kronos and obliterates the High Councilman, you're like way off to the side in the crowd.
Yeah. And even in any of the scenarios, you're always in a group. You never like by yourself talking to an Iconian. It's always an Iconian comes in, waves their magic, and you either fight them or run away.
Except for the one time where you kill one, it's not like she can report back that, oh hey, by the way, I found the other.
And it may not be a case that she was too particularly worried about your similarities to the other at the time that she was being killed.
Fighting for her life. Yeah.
Also, I kind of got the impression that Ilmiran was really the only one of the Iconians that actually spent enough time with the player to really, truly be able to recognize them later. I mean, Imtara,
time with us
you talked to her once or twice, but like only like once or twice for a little bit. Ilmiran, you help her extract the world heart, so you're off with her for a while. Taket's paying more attention to the annoying aliens who are invading Iconia, and she doesn't really pay much attention to you.
Yeah, and Taket...
Stila, well, she kind of had a reason to pay attention to Stila.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But in any case, you're able to give the sphere to the Iconians, and Lemirin kind of has a change of heart about destroying all life in the universe. Which is nice. It's nice to... That's a very Star Trek thing, is to make peace with your enemies.
Well, also, Lemirin was the one that really wanted peace most in the first place.
Yeah. Which you did see some of in previous episode. And, unfortunately, you're not able to convince Taket.
Yeah, Taket still hates everyone.
Yes. So she leaves. And she's still out there.
I think the devs have more or less confirmed that Taket's mostly around just so they have an excuse for why there are still Iconian PvE queues.
Mm-hmm. And that's fine. I mean, I personally look at them as, taking place at a particular time. So,
yeah.
If I'm playing one, I imagine myself that I'm back in that present.
Yeah. I personally see it like episode replays.
Yeah.
You're obviously not. You're going back to a specific point in the Stowe timeline.
Mm-hmm. And they have specifically said, though, that was the reason that they did that, was to justify those continued existence of the queues.
Yeah. So, you guys want to talk about the various races and whatnot that we encounter during the mission?
Go ahead.
Okay. So first we have the Icobar. The Icobar are mentioned in the mission as being a bunch of warmongers whose primary concern, well, the first thing they did after they developed spaceflight was using it to go to other solar systems so that they can conquer them. And they've been trying to convince the Iconians to give them the gate technology, and the Icobar actually seem to be the leaders of the alliance attacking Iconia. And when you're doing the ground combat part, you actually run into a lot. I think half the mobs are skinned as Icobar. So, the Icobar are one of the main groups fighting. Then you have the Denasians. But this is the part where it gets a bit weird, because you actually have the computer console, which talks about Denasians, which mentions that the Denasians were trying to get the genetic resequencers, but the Denasian that you actually see doesn't look like the other guy who was talking about wanting to get genetic resequencers, which is a bit weird. Don't entirely understand that. Anyway, what the council says is the Denasians have made repeated requests for medical technology. Our analysis of their biomedical ethics, however, indicate that at their primitive level of development, they have an 84.6% chance of doing themselves harm with genetic engineering and a 74.2% chance of using it for biological warfare. Although thus far their dealings with us have been honorable, a plague on their world has increased their demands for gene manipulators. Our recommendation is to continue to supply the nations with medical supplies and stuff. I actually didn't screenshot the entire text because it scrolled off the bottom and the other part was boring. Then there's this guy who's labeled Falcar. It doesn't actually list his race, which is kind of odd, but whatever. He has a distinctive, like that upside down T-shaped forehead ridge that I don't remember where that originally came from, but this is the guy mentioned earlier who's wearing a rebreather. He's there trying to get the Iconians to help him with some plague on his homeworld, and they give him some medicine which can cure the plague that they currently have, but he's unhappy because he's expecting to get another plague. I kind of have to wonder if maybe the Denasians were trying to kill his race with biological warfare, but it's a rather flimsy conjecture at this point, because both races are mentioned in the same context, is that they're talking to the Iconians trying to get medical supplies because of plagues. But Falcar does not look at all like the Denasian trader that you see talking to the Eichelbar envoy. The Denasian trader character actually doesn't mention plagues. He simply says he's been trying to acquire some of their data. That's it. Although he mentions acquiring data while talking to the Eichelbar envoy about trying to acquire gateway technology, so I'm not sure what type of data he's actually talking about. This is kind of interesting, though, because the Denasians definitely come across as, very, very sneaky, underhanded people. This other guy's race, well, the character's name is Falcar, but like I said, it doesn't actually list his race for some reason. I'm not sure why. Anyway, he's actually, as short and stumpy as Falcar is, I'm wondering if maybe they were thinking about making him a Daewin, but the alien generator doesn't actually support making Daewins. At least not as they look in the Romulan Reputation cutscene where you see the Daewins talking to that one Iconian. But Falcar's race is one of the ones that you engage in ground combat later, so clearly his people are helping the Eichelbar in their attack on Iconia. You don't see any of the Denasians, though. I mean, I did the mission twice, and I didn't see a single one of them.
So I'll tell you what I like about all this, is that you go into this new setting 200,000 years ago, and there's this completely new universe, really, of different species, none of which you've ever encountered before. And they have this community, they have this world, they all have lives that they've been living, and you get to learn about. some of you get to learn about what that part of the galaxy is like, which is basically your own part of the galaxy, in a completely different context. And there's this whole other community of players out there that it kind of reminded me of Mass Effect almost. And there's even characters among these races. They didn't just put down faceless people; they actually have characters.
Actually, I was thinking about the fact that as we were playing in the past, no race that we know currently exists.
Yeah.
Which of course gets back to the one of the big things that a lot of people have pointed out is Taket in the past specifically identifies Sela as a Romulan, and everyone's like, "How does Taket know what a Romulan is?"
Well, I think
the
it was
best
a goof.
answer is Cogran.
I think it was a goof on the part of the devs, but there's a couple ways you could explain it away, and the best one is Cogran let something slip.
Yeah, so Cogran mentions Romulans.
He's been there for 2 weeks,
And he was actually acting like he was enjoying talking to the Iconians.
Yeah.
Maybe he told them something he didn't intend to. Who knows?
It's possible.
Another suggestion I heard that I thought was kind of clever was they suggested that Taket didn't actually say Romulans, but the Universal Translator tried to translate it as Romulans.
Interesting.
Because it's unlikely that Taket is actually speaking anything like English.
Well,
yeah. That was one of the better explanations.
I liked that one.
Which then begs how we have files for Ancient Iconian.
Well, we do have.
It's supposed to be adaptive program.
We know that Picard was able to put together, Data actually was able to put together a lot of it based on the language influences from the D1 and the Icobar. So,
also with the investigation of the ruins on New Romulus, we have a much better understanding of the Day One language. Well, presumably we do, than we did back when Picard was studying them.
Plus, we've been hearing them speak for a while now in the present.
True. I just had a bizarre thought. What if what the word detect used wasn't meant something like traitor or something, but sounded like Romulan, and that developed, and eventually that's the name the Romulans took when they left Vulcan?
They didn't know that's what it meant in Ancient Iconian?
Yeah, or the intonation, it ended up meaning something like rebel or outcast or some other negative connotative to the Iconians, but that the Romulans picked up as an act of defiance when they
is a callback to the Vaadwaur, which the word Vaadwaur in modern Talaxian or ancient Talaxian or something meant foolhardy or something like that.
It was modern Talaxian.
Yeah.
Because the ancient Talaxian that Neelix was talking about was from before the Vaadwaur betrayed them.
So in any case, we end the mission and we go down for a little celebratory confab down on Starfleet Academy. I see a lot of people saying that they think Sela should be arrested. What do you guys think?
I ask you, do you really want to... My question to them is, do they really want to continue the cycle of violence?
It's a twofold thing. You have Sela, who's now broken because she realized she's responsible for all the ills that have befallen her people since, 200,000 years ago. But at the same time, it also technically means she is responsible for the genocide of her people.
Yes.
So you have to balance it out. Her guilt at destroying her own people versus the fact that she actively destroyed her own people through her actions. of being a sneaky, backstabbing, well, Romulan.
And in all fairness, we don't actually know what they do with Sela. She's there at the final scene, but
Yeah.
we don't know what happens after that.
They
don't
could
know
take
what-
her into custody right after that.
Yeah.
Of
So,
course, as we know, I mean, she's just going to escape again.
Of course, it's also possible that she gets beamed back up to the Dominion battleship that she arrived at Earth in.
Yeah, there's a Dominion battle fleet still parked right above Earth.
Yeah.
either way, I don't think we have seen the last of Sela.
Or the
I actually
Imperial
think,
Romulans.
well, we know that she likes doing the voiceovers. We know that her and many of the devs are actually real friends now, so I wouldn't be surprised either. Normally, I'd say, yeah, we've seen the last of her. But I think because of those factors, I think, well, we'll see her back.
Yeah, no, I mean they've just hit a major turning point in her character's story. So I think that they will capitalize on this at some point in the future.
What I've always wanted from Sela is almost like the Hannibal Lecter scene where you go visit her in prison and ask her advice on something. Sadly, we never got to have that because we always catch up with her after she's escaped.
Well, in the current situation, though, we might be able to hunt her down somewhere in Dominion space.
This is true.
I mean, Sela was always kind of a tragic character because she was so bound by her anger. Even in TNG, I mean...
Her anger at her mother, her anger at her father.
Starfleet. She just had so much anger in her that it just kept pushing her towards a darker place. So, finally having been able to see like some kind of turning point in her character story is a welcome thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Also, she tended to what's the word for it? Not think through her actions carefully all the time.
Yeah.
And now she's realized what her reckless actions have actually led to, and it's not good at all.
Come to the realization that she is at fault, something that she's never faced before.
So
and that she's actually caused a lot of her own problems, and that instead of well, you get.
So we've actually been talking about this episode for probably longer than we should have. So real quick, if this was a Foundry mission, what star level would you give it?
5 easy.
5?
Yeah.
Another 5?
5.
5? Okay. I'd say also a 5.
Yeah, this has
Pretty
been
good.
some of Cryptic's best work.
Yeah. And I really liked the conclusion to the war was peace and not some form of temporal genocide.
So the question now becomes, do we still have access to the gateways? Because now we can go anywhere if we do.
And we still have access to this. What we know we have access to is a time machine.
Which
And we
the
know
devs
from
have
Cryptic
hinted-
Interviews-
Everybody has access to Kremen time tech.
Yeah. Including
And
the
which
player
are-
character I was leveling
like
over the weekend.
atomic bomb. It's sort of the atomic bomb now. What this genie is out of the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Does this mean we might actually see more having to do with the various factions' temporal agencies?
Oh, I
think this is the beginning of the temporal Cold War, if such a thing could ever have a quote beginning.
I agree with Drogon. I think this is the start of the temporal Cold War in earnest.
Well,
Which
it's
they
the
only-
start of the Federation's involvement in the temporal Cold War. Let's put it that way.
Which
You
means
don't
the
count
future
Archer.
guy isn't going to be Archer, like Braga said?
Well,
You never know.
it
We
never,
don't know what they're
that
going to
never
do.
made it on screen, so that's not canon, technically.
And we don't
Yeah.
know where Cryptic will take it.
We don't. But how awesome would it be if they did somehow get Scott Bakula to come in and do a little voiceover?
I don't know
The
if we'll
return
get
of
him,
Captain Angry Pants.
but anything's possible.
Anything
I mean,
is
they've
possible.
certainly seen a lot of success with getting voice actors from Star Trek.
Yeah.
Well, he
So
just
anyway.
has to escape the Harmon sphere.
So let's move on. We've still got plenty of time left, so let's talk about other time travel things. Let's see if we can figure out, what are the different kinds of time travel stories you can do. Obviously, the first one that comes to mind is going back in time, which of course we did in this episode. But as Foundry authors, we have a lot of options here. We can go forward in time. We do have assets that can kind of help with that. We have the time ships, the Wells class, and that sort of ilk, as well as Klingon and Romulan versions that come from what century do those guys come from?
The 29th. The Wells is from the 29th.
Wells is from the 29th. And we have the uniforms, I believe, in the Foundry.
Yeah,
But
as
those
well
are-
as the.
But those are actually a really cool thing to be able to use because of the fact that they don't have, because of the way they can be mixed with other pieces, and just the general look of them is different from most of the things in the game.
Yeah, the Klingon ones have that nice red texture, which is quite cool. And then, of course, the Federation ships look just very, very different. I mean, they're sort of, I don't know, they almost look like sea creatures.
But like an annelid almost.
Yeah.
Kind of like have that segmented skin and all that great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I just noticed something that I forgot to mention earlier. Did you look at the Iconian text on those floating ring props that you see in the mission?
No.
Way back in '99, somebody made a font. Obviously, this is unofficial, but they made a font that used the Iconian characters that you see in the TNG episode where Picard and Data are messing with the Iconian technology. Well, the ring props have the. If you use that font as a source of a decryption, the text on the ring props spells out Star Trek.
That's good. I know Taco has gone and looked at those fan-made fonts before, because I think at some point he was tweeting people asking if anybody knew where to find a ancient Vulcan script. And I know it's used in the one where you're in Two Box Mind. Yeah, Sir Boulevard in the chat room is bringing up a good point, which I found earlier and just hadn't found a good place to interject. We do have patch notes for tomorrow, and it's more than we expected. We have 2 new Ancient Iconia maps, O1 and O2. I don't know what the difference is. And it says added...
Guessing,
go ahead.
Maybe one blown up, one not.
yeah, that.
And we also have added Ancient Iconian doors. And added 2 Ancient Iconian consoles. As well as dogs, kittens, and caracals.
Meh.
Yay, Stitch.
I know Sutherland will be very happy to have beagles.
The beagles.
So yeah, I mean that's some fantastic stuff that we're going to get tomorrow.
There is a known issue.
Uh-oh.
2 walkways are missing from the Ancient Iconia O2 map.
Well, we can figure that out.
That's it. I forgot to mention earlier about the mission. At one point in the mission, 2 of the walkways disappear. I'm not entirely sure if it's intentional or not. I'm suspecting that it's done to force you to go the long way to the transporter pad with the Iconian gate, but it happens before the shelling starts. Because it actually right as soon as you're done talking to everybody, and they mentioned that Iconia has been attacked, even though nothing has actually happened to create battle damage on the map yet. Two of the force field walkways disappear before you even go inside the building. I'm guessing it's the same two walkways.
So anyway, I can't wait to see what people come up with to use those maps. But back to time travel. You can go forward, you can go back. There's also, what we've been doing with the Iconian, or not the Krenim weapon, which is removing things from time, which is changing your own timeline into something else, which could definitely bring some possibilities.
Well, one amusing possibility I've been pondering is something that people on the forum suggested, is that what would happen if the Iconians actually had been killed off like our mission suggested they were supposed to?
Mm-hmm.
What would that have done to the timeline?
Exactly. And since we do have the Krenim time ship in the Foundry, we can use it. And make all sorts of changes to our timeline.
I mean, one interesting possibility that I discussed with someone on the forum was the possibility that maybe, the Icobar would rule the Beta Quadrant.
Yeah. So, in thinking about time travel missions, I went and played a couple of them last night, in fact. The first one was one I had played before, but it had been a long, long time. It's Chronitons and Klingons by CaptainPFDennis. This very, one of the first missions that was ever made for the Foundry when it was on holodeck. And when I got to the end, I discovered that my review, which I'm sure I left about 4 years ago, told him that the mission was uncompletable. But I was charitable and gave him a 3-star. That was nice of me. But it was nice because this time I could actually revise that and bump him up to a 4. So in this mission, you basically are thrown back in time by the wormhole to the Kittimer massacre. And unfortunately, your being there changes things, which is a good piece of advice for anybody doing time travel. I mean, the very fact that you are there might change how things are supposed to turn out. It's that you can't observe the phenomenon without. Effect. Yeah.
You go back in time, pick up a penny off the sidewalk, and you don't think twice about it. But what would that penny have done if you hadn't picked it up?
Exactly. So
unless, of course, it turns out that you were supposed to do it, in which case
you were always supposed to
not do it.
But in this case, what you figure out is that you have changed things, and you obviously have records of how it was supposed to go. So you spend the rest of the mission actually trying to fix it and get things to turn out exactly the way they turned out, which I thought was a nice touch. And actually, the mission is completable now, Paul. So he says it's never been updated, but at least it was somehow fixed from when I first played it. And it was a very good mission. Obviously, Paul has honed his craft much more in the intervening years, but it was still pretty good. And it was nice. It's fun to go back to things that have happened in the Star Trek universe, whether they've been on screen or not, because you interact with Worf's father in this one, and that's pretty fun. And you see historical events, and that's an opportunity we have in the Foundry that we can do through time travel, or through just fun holodeck stuff and like that. And the other mission I played was a very, very different one. It's called Time's Arena by, and I have no idea how to pronounce this, but torontonensis. It was the first one that popped up when I searched for the word time over on the Fed side. So in this one, basically you are pulled back in time by a Ferengi who found a Takan artifact that has the ability to pull people through time. And he uses it to pull ships from various time periods and make them fight and hold betting on who's going to be the winner.
I think I've actually played this one.
Which I thought was a fun premise. It didn't have the greatest ending because Q showed up and saved the day. Just completely out of nowhere. And so, you know, I wouldn't have done it like that. But, you know, the original premise is quite fun. And he pulled you back into an era when there wouldn't have been anybody else around. So that, you know, that's kind of two examples of things you can do with time travel. And in talking about these, we've kind of come across some of the difficulties you might have when dealing with time travel, which is those sort of causality loops of, was I always meant to do this? Or was I not supposed to do this? And in researching these sorts of things, I found a couple of things that, you know, there are several sort of principles that you can do when you're doing a time travel mission. And one of them was, you know, the immutable timeline. You know, the timeline that can't be changed no matter what you actually do to it. Because it was always supposed to be like that. And that's what we see in Midnight. We go back with the idea that we're going to change things, and we end up changing nothing.
Yeah, but I mean, that leaves the question is, did we not change things because we were incapable of changing things, or because we lacked the knowledge to actually change things?
I would say probably lacked the knowledge to actually change things.
Well,
because we didn't know how it was supposed to go.
Obviously, if we were to go back in time and tell ourselves just before we went back to Iconia that Seal is going to go postal, obviously things would play out differently.
Yeah, or, you know, you go back 30 seconds before you beam down, and once she beams down, you stun her and carry her off.
Yeah, she doesn't really do anything particularly useful. One interesting thing I kind of pondered is... Oh, wait, I lost my train of thought again. Dang it.
Your train of thought got zapped back into the 20th century.
Oh, wait, now I remember. The reason why the butterfly effect exists is it's a limitation of our ability to understand the universe around us. We simply don't have the detail required to anticipate how small changes that we can't even track will affect other things.
Wasn't there like some idea in quantum mechanics is that the closer you measure, you try to measure an object, the less accurate you can measure its change, or something like that?
That's a form of sampling error created by the methods used to measure things. One analogy I heard is that attempting to pinpoint the location of subatomic particles is a lot like dribbling a basketball across a basketball court trying to find a bowling ball. And having that as your only method of actually detecting the bowling ball's presence.
So what you guys are getting into is the uncertainty.
The
uncertainty principle.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Heisenberg's explanation of the uncertainty principle is not that it's physically impossible to know the property, the location and speed of a particle precisely. It's that we don't have the scanning technology to be able to do that.
So let me ask you guys this. Think back to Star Trek. What do you think is the best time travel episode? There's lots of them. It's a hard choice.
Well, I'm afraid to mention mine because I might get sued if I even utter its words.
Do it.
By a grouchy old man who likes pizza.
Do it.
Don't
be ashamed.
I like City on the Edge of Forever. Who doesn't like City on the Edge of Forever?
The creator of it.
Talking, of course, about the
notable curmudgeon.
Notable curmudgeon, whose work was so changed he wanted his name off it.
Yeah, well,
he probably regretted that decision later,
but it still turned out into a good episode.
Yeah,
I think it's one of the best TOS episodes.
CaptainPFDennis in the chat room is saying past tense 1 and 2, which is ones that I've always very much liked.
I don't remember which one is past tense.
It's where Cisco goes back into the past and gets mistaken for Gabriel Bell in the Sanctuary District.
Okay. Well, that's kind of like
a matter of thinking of one where I don't hate the premise. I think my favorite one was the one where O'Brien actually has a future version of himself, or replaces himself with a future version of himself. Let's see here. He absorbs some
the episode
sort of
where they kill O'Brien.
Yeah, he actually
several times.
He goes into the future and finds out that DS9 is about to get destroyed, and he has to figure out how to stop it. And this is triggered by... Okay, one of the things with this episode is it's one of the few episodes where something happening in an alternate universe affects the episode, but isn't the focus of the episode, because O'Brien's making these largely spontaneous jumps into the future, and they eventually figure out that the reason for this is that there's a damaged Romulan warbird orbiting the station in a parallel universe. And whenever it gets close to the station in the parallel universe, the radiation it's emitting causes O'Brien to jump into the future. Yeah, that was a weird one. But anyways.
It was an inventive episode, a neat use of it.
But it's an example of a future episode, because O'Brien's jumping several days into the future. But of course,
I don't think it's even days. I think it's hours, isn't it?
I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, it's
I think
hours.
It was variable.
It was a really short period of time, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It was like 6 hours naturally, and then they found a way to get the jump like the shorter period of time.
So that's something that, a Foundry author could do, is that you don't have to make big jumps. You could make little ones and have it be interesting.
It's a funny thing. I was thinking about what my favorite episodes were, and I have to cheat a little and say that I like different time travel episodes for different reasons.
Yeah.
I would say probably one of my favorites is Timeless from Voyager.
I was hoping someone would say that. Because that was what I was going to say. Is that's my favorite.
So why'd you like that one?
You mentioned it earlier. There's an early Voyager episode with the paradox where Janeway and Paris get trapped in the past, only to cause the explosion that they were trying to stop. I've always actually kind of wanted to do a Foundry mission similar to that, where you have a colony that you're like seeing before and after its destruction.
And it turns out you're the one who caused it.
Oh,
I don't know yet if I'll make the player cause it, but it'll be something like there are like fissures in time, and you keep bouncing between before and after the explosion.
well, part of the reason why I disliked Timeless, though, was the simple fact that it's one of those things where if you attempt to trace cause and effect, it literally goes nowhere.
Now, the only thing that I don't like about Timeless, and it is sort of a general dislike of something that they used on Voyager quite a lot, is the reset button.
Yeah.
So you basically, at the end of the episode, something happens where everything you've been watching for 40 minutes never happened.
Yep. Also,
unless you watch The Year of Hell.
The planet in question was exploded when you first see it, but it becomes unexploded by the end of the episode.
But otherwise, I did like Timeless because I mean it gives you an interesting glimpse into a possible future. Obviously, sort of like a dark future for our characters. Lets Garrett Wang really let loose with the acting, much more so than he usually gets to.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I just thought of something. I can't really call it a magic reset button episode. It's like a negative reset button episode because the status of things at the beginning of the episode is not the same for everything. It's just the same for the crew of Voyager. They fly through the solar system and nothing happens. But the people on the planet, their planet unexplodes.
I don't know. I mean, in Timeless is kind of interesting because the whole episode is bound as two plots. It's got what's their attempt to launch the
slipstream
drive, and then the aftermath years later with Harry Kim trying to stop the outcome. So it actually plays off against each other really nicely.
Oh wait, we're talking about two different episodes, aren't we?
Yeah, I'm not sure what episode that you're talking about.
I forget what the name was. It was the one with... I'll try looking it up.
But I thought that was kind of a nice counterpoint because really Harry's story in the future is the quest to press the reset button. It's stated in the beginning that is their intended goal. So it's not like...
And that's why it's a bit better than some of the other reset button episodes.
Yeah.
See, with each series, I kind of go different ones. Obviously, I've already said City on the Edge of Never. But with like Voyager, I actually prefer the one where Voyager got fractured into all the little separate time zones.
Ooh, that was
a fun one.
Mostly because you got to see the return of Chaotica.
Yeah, just about anything that's Chaotica.
I actually loved.
Also, you got to see the Borg version of 7 of 9 throw down with who's that Cardassian Maquis infiltrator?
Seska,
yeah. That was fun.
Yeah, that was kind of a cool episode just for kind of highlighting all of these different little pieces of Voyager all crammed together.
Yeah.
Ooh, also it's the episode that had Vanessa Branch.
It was the time travel version of a clip show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Basically.
Without actually...
It was like way clever and more fun to watch than a clip show.
And less clippier.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, the really fun part, though, is that you have the future versions of Naomi and Icheb, which are really the ones that are actually getting things done to fix the problem, because the actual main cast, well, the version of Chakotay we have in the episode is actually from the past. He actually has no idea what's going on.
Well, I thought the Chakotay we had was from the present because he was the only one that could...
yeah, it was present Chakotay. Everybody else was...
Didn't we have... Oh, yeah, because it was... we had past Janeway.
Okay,
it passed Janeway.
And that's why she was reluctant to trust Chakotay, even though...
Right, we had just got thrown to the Delta Quadrant Janeway.
Yeah.
And the Doctor was roughly the same time period.
Yeah, early Voyager.
And actually, so was pretty much everybody.
Mm-hmm.
They saw a bunch of people who are in the sick bay that it wasn't very clear. They seemed to be present.
So one particular type of time travel we haven't talked about, but since we're going through the different series, I think for TNG, a lot of people would agree on cause and effect as the best time travel episode.
Which in of itself wasn't actually time travel, but more...
No, but as a time loop episode.
Time and Again. It was actually the fourth episode of Voyager is the one I was talking about. Well, the memory alpha thing says, while investigating a massive explosion that destroyed all life on the planet, Janeway and Paris are swept back a day in time where they must prevent the explosion.
Yeah, that's the one you guys were talking about earlier.
So, talking about cause and effect, it's a really bizarre episode because it's repeating the same set of scenes over and over again.
At a time when Frasier totally destroyed the Enterprise.
Really boring. But it works because every time it's subtly different, which means that you become
they vary it up.
You become really hyper aware of the differences. So it becomes this thing that
and it's an interesting one of, there's all kinds of different, almost every sci-fi show out there has done a time loop episode. And they're all different slightly. But what keeps, what you have to do with time episode is figure out a way out of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think
like in Janeway's case, she figures out that by stopping herself, she would stop the explosion.
Well, I mean,
and
most times,
in cause and effect, you figure out that no, we took the wrong advice.
But I mean, in most time loops, you get a variation on the Groundhog Day scenario.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, nobody remembers from the previous loop, and so they've only got these.
Yeah, and a lot of the others somebody
hints.
remembers, but not in this case. They figure out a way to get the info across to the next loop.
Yeah, but I mean, the changes between each loop are so subtle.
Well, also, it turns out that the changes are not actually ripples in the time stream. It is simply
it's echoes from the previous time stream.
No. It's actually like something Data was doing subconsciously because they come up with a way of transmitting data back into Data's positronic matrix, which was causing him to do things that, in theory, only an android could do.
Well, I mean, only in the final loop. That's their ultimate solution. Earlier than that, though, they keep getting these slight echoes that kind of fade in, like the voices that Crusher hears, and that constant feeling of deja vu. So,
of course, Voyager almost uses the same thing with the Slipstream episode with Harry trying, because they send a message through Seven's Borg relays.
Particle node.
There you go.
Yeah, and they show the first message which fails to change things, and they still crash, and then they show the corrected one where he allows them to escape the slipstream.
But it seems like, one of the things about time travel episodes is that the most important thing is not how it happened. The most important thing is how you get out of it. And that, that's a good thing for Foundry authors to consider if they're going to do a time travel episode is, they got to figure out a way out of it that is good, is dramatic, and makes at least a modicum of sense. Castmodean is leaving us for the evening, so we will bid you farewell.
Good night, good fight, and Doom!
Yes, we almost forgot Doom. So anyway, of the three of us here, who has done time travel Foundry missions?
Me. Actually, well, that was the focus of one of my first time travel or first Foundry missions. That I did a Foundry mission where that's actually set as part of the Klingon War arc. So you end up fighting some of the Vat's lackeys who went back in time. Blah blah blah.
I almost forgot to mention, since we brought up cause and effect, that's the episode where our temporal agent Philip Cray, comes from, because he was on the Bozeman when it traveled through time. So anyway, I have also done a Foundry time travel mission. It was kind of a little mission. It's not a big epic one. I established this mirror universe villain in one mission, and I was thinking to myself, oh, what's his prime universe version like? So I figured out this thing where he was a scientist, and he had a wife who died in the Dominion War, and ever since he had been haunted by a vision of her, encouraging him to go back and save her. So he figures out a way to use a dark matter experiment to travel back in time. But it turns out he couldn't save her. It was one of those immutable timeline things where that was not something that he was able to do. But it turns out that the reason he's been haunted by her all these years is because at that instant, there was a non-corporeal being who was ripped out of its dimension because it was in the Dominion War. There's lots of energy being expended in this battle. And it ripped this non-corporeal being who latched onto him, essentially, and has been appearing to him all this time and trying to get back to that moment and get back to her dimension.
Like kind of like Ronin or whatever that guy's name was.
Something like that.
Because, there was that episode of that weird anaphasic energy being that had been messing with the Crusher family for however many decades or centuries.
Yeah, it was a little bit like that. But I figured that, once she got back to her actual dimension, she could send you back home. So that was how I got out of it. So I don't know. Let's see. I'd say we're getting towards the end of our time limit here. So why don't we throw up our contact info there, Dragoon?
All right. If you want to email us, we can be reached at foundryroundtable@live.com. We are also on Twitter at foundryroundtab. Drogan can be reached at Drogan1701. Mark can be reached at Markhawkman, and I can be reached at Greendragoon. And since Cast isn't here anymore, I can say he can be reached at Starbase UGC.
All right. Well, we will say goodnight from past, present, and future.
Which will be one of them next week.
Yes.
Good night.
Night.